Live.
Hello, everybody out there in the ether, to the delicious recipe with your host Adele here on UPRN Radio. And tonight we called this one Golden Flaky Treats, and it's gonna deal with gold, and I guess sort of what I've sort of looked into gold from history and its uses and what it is to today. But yes, getting into the whole part about what the delicious recipe is, we throw the ingredients in the pot, whether they're good, bad, taste good or taste bad, and we just keep on throwing things in there, and we just see what kind of meal we come out at the end. And through my research, through what I've been doing there over the past little while into these different topics, there, I just keep on putting things into the pot, and we'll just see what we get there, and maybe with what I find out, and maybe what I relay to you, and maybe you'll get your own sort of way of thinking there, and see something maybe a different way that you haven't really seen it before, a different taste and of life that we have with us here. So I always have my biggest question, like I guess so always ask the question why. I'm always a questioning thing there. I always never really was. I like a lot of things like I've said before on past shows, and if you've tuned in there before or not, but always sort of looked at things at what I was taught through in school and life and coming up. And I said before there, like my mom was very religious in that, and took us to Sunday school, so we were taught things through God and the church, and always had questions to why when it came to timelines of stuff. And you see that a lot more now. I guess if you look for that stuff in on the internet or interweb or whatever you want to call it, through different things, through just from looking at different sites, different researchers, even YouTube videos and different documentaries and stuff like that. And I just wanted to point one other thing out there too, that I think I mentioned this last time I was on there a couple weeks ago, is we had found my partner there, my wife there, Laura, she'd got this Amazon Prime TV, and I never really watched that thing at all, and I never found anything on there was really any good in what they sort of gave you. But then I went into the search bar and just put in documentaries, and then I went on there, and then all of a sudden there's like 11,600 something documentaries on just all different topics, everything on there, and you can just punch in, and it's not that you believe everything that's somebody says on the TV or whatever and stuff like that, but it was just sort of an interesting thing that sort of opened up a new avenue or new resource, I guess, in a way, to get other people's opinions and thoughts on different sort of subjects. And there's a lot of different stuff out there, and that's not available, that you can't find on YouTube or find on other streaming services, or um, just on the internet. And these are just whatever it is. I can't even remember what I think it was whatever she got for that anyways, but it was just something I sort of just remembered there too, is that I had found this part there off of that Amazon Prime thing there. So just to relay that there, I'm not getting paid for Amazon Prime anyways. I'm not a sponsor of that, but I just thought it was sort of interesting that all the documentaries that were out there that that were available just on that, like over 11,000. And it's like a whole range of topics. But anyways, getting into this whole thing, I'll get into the whole part about gold there afterwards. But like with history, I've always had a big thing with history and what we were taught, and I always found that there was always a problem. And you see this lots there too now with new technology that's coming out here, and different theories, is that it's going against of what we were taught in school and what we were told how life, how civilization sort of evolved, I guess you can use that word, uh, through the timeline. And there's different things about that where you start to ask questions like, did that really happen? who's telling you that, what the information is coming from. And I think there was a quote there that was told there about history, is that, and this was by one of the Nazi ministers of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels: if you repeat a lie often enough, people will come to believe it, and you will become to believe it yourself. And Napoleon Bonaparte also had a quote there too: history is a set of lies agreed upon. And so I sort of look into that sort of stuff a little bit. Not that I'm saying that I'm a Nazi party supporter or anything like that, but just the whole thing about propaganda. And I've mentioned there, I guess, a few episodes before about the propaganda machine that was used throughout the States. And I can't even remember his name right now. Dubé, I think it was. Is it Dubé? Something like that. And just the way that he had changed the part there to get with the women smoking in movement in the States there. They got that and started this whole campaign, and it was just all through propaganda and media manipulation that they changed the things that women had the right just as well as men to smoke. And I think they were called freedom cigarettes or something like that. And so all of a sudden cigarette sales went up, and women were smoking more, and I don't guess when they were before, but just the way that manipulation of history and what's sort of happened there. And like, I guess you've always heard there too, victor goes the spoils, and the victor writes the history. And an example of that, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, I remember watching in the final scene of, or one of the final scenes of that, when that ended, is I'm not familiar with all the characters on there, but the female knight, she goes right into the history book about her friend, the prince, who was with his sister. I guess they were a couple. They had kids together through incest and that. And she just wrote into the history book that he was a great guy, and he defended the cause. But the real history about what he really did when he sort of deceived his family and went against, I guess, the crown, and against his sister, and then how they died, and all the different things there, that part was always left out. But like the real story of him was left out, and just this flowery epithet, I guess you'd say, or whatever, a flowery notation about what a great guy he was and what great things that he had done. So that's the whole part that I sort of always get into about history, is about I start questioning things, and then I'll go into this whole part about why is gold important to us in the world. But as you can see there, big question of why. We can only be confident in assuming in our own individual history. All other is just told information. Like most history, it is written by the victor or the ones in power. And like that example there, Game of Thrones. More and more today, we are discovering more ancient lost civilizations and settlements that don't describe to the taught timeline history that we were taught and told to believe in school. Most people fail to care or feign interest in the past. Common line, and history always repeats itself, and cycles of history that seem to follow, and that's stuff like that. We understand less than 10% of the oceans that cover 75% of the planet. Conflicts between religion, evolutionists, creationists, archaeologists, ancient tablets, etc. They all muddy the waters on true history. Problems with dating technology and theory becoming fact. Peer-tenured scholars refusing to miss possible mistakes because their position is based on their belief, cause more problems in learning the truth. I seem to think there's a big problem there, is that you have this, it's been noted before when other people have gone in to study history, and I've seen this in other documentaries with there's always this fight that happen when people come up with new theories or they find new information, that it's always knocked, it's sort of discredited or looked down upon, or they're sort of outed as kooks, as some of them could be and some of them may not be. But you got to figure is that if you're a teacher or a professor and you've based your your whole career on your theory and your understanding of something, and that's what you get paid for, and that's what you teach students. And this comes an interesting point in this is that when you have something like that, and then the information comes out that everything that you've been taught, telling people and been teaching for your 10, 20, 30, 40 years as a professor or a teacher is actually wrong, or there's problems with it, and you're getting paid for what you had done before, of course you want to sort of protect your own, I guess, your own thoughts and beliefs on that, even if the information that's coming out sort of contradicts what you've been telling people. And there's always seems to be a big, huge, well, not a big, huge, but I notice a big, huge, I guess I could say a big, huge, always a pushback on new theories that go against what is socially accepted. And whether like that's the whole thing with theory, and I've said this many times before, theory is not fact. Theory is just it's a question of this is what it could possibly be. It's not proven. It's just the question is not, because if it was theory, it'd be the fact of history or the fact of this or the fact of evolution, or instead of the theory of evolution. It's just all theories, right? So it's what the best information that people have at that time, and that's what they base things on, and that's what they supposed, and then they theorize on this stuff. And that's where we come to this part, is that this is what we understand as of now as a theory. But when new information arises, and there always seems to be a pushback with peer scholars around the globe, all over, is because it could actually sort of be detrimental to their position. That's the way I sort of look at it and feel, and that's why I think that people sort of these scholars and scientists sort of really push back on that, because it sort of unjustifies what they've been sort of teaching. And I always sort of see that when it comes into this part there is with ancient knowledge and tablets and stuff like that. And I've noticed that along with, they found like thousands and thousands of tablets from ancient times. And there's only like a handful of them that have been let open to the public, right? And there's always some sort of governing body, or could be religious like the Vatican, and that hold like the Vatican Vault Library, or the Smithsonian, or the Egyptian archaeology, whatever they're called there, the board there that deals with all the digging, and the British Museum of Natural Sciences, History, and stuff like that. They all have claimed to by government agencies to come in, and they are the overseeing control group that comes in, and they have first pick, and they decide whether or not they open up that sort of information to the public. And that's why when any new discovery is found, that they usually have to be called. And if you follow along any of these TV shows that are on the Discovery Channel, like the Curse of Oak Island, that's when there's where they think that the Ark of the Covenant or manuals from the Templars or gold or stuff like that, or the Holy Grail, whatever they suppose might be down there, all this history that's sort of lost, like I guess like the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail or something like that, is that they have a government archaeology history person that's on site that has to categorize everything what they're digging in, and whether or not they can remove something. And there always has to be some sort of okay from some sort of higher up power, whether it's government controlled or Vatican controlled, or independent, like I'm not sure if the Smithsonian or British Museum are government run. They probably are, but they are part of a government body that does oversee over things when it comes to history. And that's a big problem that has happened there with even gold being found on these Spanish galleons there through the West Indies area. and who has claim to what in the water. I think there was a big case there about a Spanish galleon that there was millions of dollars of gold, and I think Spain requested that that be returned to them, and big huge fights. But then it all goes down to history and what had happened. Like you have there is even with North America with history. They're finding out that maybe there was civilizations here before the recorded time, like Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. There was uh, Vikings that were here beforehand, and there's possible people that traveled through the land bridge across through Asia to Alaska, and then down into North America, and then into South America. They're finding things like even with the pyramids, they're finding more and more pyramids all across the globe, all lined up the exact same way, similar type of building techniques from Egypt all the way to South America, where these are history books that we were taught in school. There was no contact or no travel that way, and now you're finding out about the Phoenicians. Could have been a possible traveling race that traveled around to all of these places before the Egyptians were even came in and assumed control of what the pyramids were. Is that they just found them there, and then they assumed, hey, these are ours, and assumed that they took the changed history that they had it, and it goes into the parts of what has happened with Rome. Like they say Rome fell, but Rome never fell. Rome was just transformed into a different entity, the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, and that's a controlling force hand in hand with monarchy and governments all around the world. But that's a topic about the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church probably to get into another time, but that does tie into things about what happened in history. We have lots of things where we have different cultures around the world relaying similar stories, similar stories of our timeline through the past, like even flood, pre-flood, post-flood, all these hieroglyphs and tablets, and whether they are writing a truth or something we just don't know, because a lot of this history, tablet information, I think there was copper scrolls that were found, or golden scrolls, or plates that were found in South America too. They were all scooped up by government agencies and taken away, and that's the whole part. We get into talking about history, and you can, and maybe in another one I'll get into about the stuff about the church and the Bible and the Roman Catholic Church and how that's been all manipulated, because that's also has like don't get me wrong, it says I do believe in God, and that I just don't believe in church. So sort of I'm religious in a way, but I'm sort of have a problem with church and worshiping a man and an altar and giving 10% every week for no reason, and sort of, but anyways, that's something else. That's my own problems, but we'll go into there. So gold, and we'll get into what we're talking about here, what this whole topic was about. Well, I got in there about the golden flaky treats, which our topic is today. And I always had the question there is, why is gold so important, and why is that such a thing? Like, when did that all start? Like, I understand, like, even now today is that, well, even with our money here in North America, we're no longer on a gold standard. And I'll get into more about that. But the gold was sort of like, at the time there was used as a sort of a, used to base your currency on. I think the US has got away from that, and that's the Federal Reserve. They print their own money, and that's off of that's into a topic that I talked about beforehand, is that basically is they're on a fiat system, just like Canada is up here. And I found out even through this, I probably knew this, but just didn't really remember it though, was that Canada doesn't even have any gold anymore. We sold all our gold reserves off. We used to have it there at the Bank of Canada, but they keep on getting rid of it and selling it there. But we also do have a huge supply of gold still yet to be mined. So Gold has always been powerful stuff. The earliest human history interaction with it has been lost in time, but its association with God, the gods, immortality, wealth are common throughout many cultures of our planet. And much conflict and speculation of why it began, like why gold. Someone, something made a reason to signify its importance, and that's sort of what the question sort of I had there with gold itself is that there are a lot of other things out there that are more valuable than gold, and that was one sort of thing, and like there was like 10 things as of like the 10 minerals that are more valuable than gold as of 2013. Plutonium, like gold, I think is at right now, I think is just under $1,700 an ounce US. And all these prices would be in US anyways here. Platinum is like $2,200 an ounce. Black opals are like 18,400 an ounce. Meteorites, $52,000 a night. Tanzanite, 85,000. Never even heard of that one. Tanzanite, $85,000. Red diamonds, $745,000. Bixbite or red beryl, $1.3 million an ounce. Taffiette, that's pretty rare. It's priceless. It's worth more than millions of dollars. There's only less than a half a cup of that ever found on Earth. There's another stuff, panite. I think there's only 25 crystals exist. That stuff is priceless. Juramenduite, priceless. There's only been a few samples found, and grandidurite, priceless samples, like stuff that's way more valuable than gold. Like even like platinum, like that's a way more useful item than gold is there. So, but what is gold there done anyway? So gold, it's has superior chemical properties, cannot be destroyed by water or rust. Has a high melting point, which is around 1,000 degrees Celsius or 1945 Fahrenheit. It's durable. Takes about 1,000 years for gold coins to degrade. It's malleable. It's ductile and supposedly to be very rare. And that's the thing. Like silver is very plentiful and it has lots of uses, like industrial uses. Copper, more plentiful. And we go back into history is that we go into what did we use for tools when you're told through in your history books, and when we came from a caveman using stones and bones, and then found copper and soft metal, and copper tools were used, and that's what they believe were used during the time when they built the pyramids, cutting quartz and granite. Rock with copper, which seems to be quite an impossibility. But see, that's all parts of history that's sort of been manipulated or hidden the way I sort of see it. And there's a lot of theories out there on what it might have been. And it's even the theories of our timeline have sort of been like there's a belief. If you look into the Aztec or Mayan calendar and other things like that, where our timeline, we could be in the sixth cycle of what's going on here, but then you'll have through the Christian or through the Bible things is that human beings have only been on Earth for 6,500 years. So then you're finding stuff that they're finding archaeology digs that date back to 18,000 years where people were. So there's a lot of conflicts when it comes into our history of what it is. Like maybe, who knows, like anything's possible. Like I'm not nailed down to any one theory of what it could be. Maybe maybe the theory is here that this cycle is this 6,500 years, or this last 12,000 since the 11,500 from the last ice age that happened. And who knows what was happening, because all of our history that we have seems to date to what has happened over in Egypt, Middle East area, into Rome area, when like after I guess what we have in history there that was written about the Library of Alexandria, which was supposed to contain a lot of history of what was there, but that was all sacked and burned by Constantine, I believe, and or the Romans, and all that stuff was gone. Everything was taken, and lost information was gone. Whether some of it was hidden away, like we found in the last while there, Dead Sea Scrolls, or Dead Sea Scrolls, which add other stuff there, and like even stories that have been in the Bible, they have there with the Apocrypha books that have been taken out of the Bible by the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican. Lots of books have been taken out, and even as far as from 1611, uh, even with the King James Bible, there was other books that were in there. I think Enoch and Jubilees and stuff like that. I think there was extra books, Esdras and stuff like that. I think there's a part there. I think what I was reading there in Second Esdras. I think there was a line in there is that under God's inspiration, Esdras dictated to 5 scribes all the books of the Bible that had been manipulated and moved, plus the additional 70 books that were to be read by the wise. Second Esdras was one of them. And what he got out there is that so a lot of this information has been taken away by people in control, which would be called man. You got to remember that the Pope is just a person, right? The Pope is not a god or anything like that, and whether or not that goes against people's religious beliefs or not. But that's the way I sort of look at it there, is that I don't think he's divine anyway, in any way, shape, or form. He was picked by people to be in that position. And if you go back and you look into the history of the Vatican and where they sort of came through black nobility, very rich families that sort of controlled stuff and controlled trade, and received a lot of money from the people, what you'd say the lower people on the totem pole, and they controlled power structures with government hand in hand, and there's a lot of control, and what they've changed in our history to maintain, to keep them sort of self-empower. But that'll be into another sort of part of the book. But if you even look into maybe we'll go into that. But if you look into histories of, say, that was written in the Bible, like if you go back into the Septuagint and the Vulgate, and even back into the old Hebrew stuff, is that there was no vowels in any of the writings, right? Vowels were added in later on into the books that we have now. So there was no A, E, I, O, U. So if you had a word that, say, like I give you 2 letters like NT, now if you add in an A, you get a nat. If you add an E in there, you get a net. You add an I, you get a knit. You add an O, you get a knot. You add a U, you get a nut. And a Y, you get whatever, a night. But you can see how the form or the change of the word can change the meaning of what NT would be by adding a different vowel in the middle of those 2 things. Or you added one in front, put an A in front of NT, you got ant. Like it's a whole bunch of different scenarios can end up happening there. So whoever did or rewrote or changed from a different language and added stuff, there could always be errors, manipulation for power structure gains, or to maintain control. Like this, these are all a whole bunch of topics and possibilities that can be out there and could be there, and to discount that that's not a possibility is just leaving a blind eye to what is there, and just accepting everything that is what we're in our current sort of state of affairs right now. So back to gold there. So gold, usefulness. Why was it so useful? Why did they need it so much back in there? So back in the old times. So I was looking into a site about to try and find anything about gold and the times of why we needed it. There's so much known about it, all that stuff, and what the reason of gold and why its importance just all speculation, and whatever that is, it's that stuff has sort of been lost in time. Like if you look, like I'll refer to sort of things that I've read in that, and I remember the whole part there about that was written when the angels fell from heaven down to earth. If you subscribe to that story, um, there was talk about is that the fallen angels, when they mated with human women, and that they taught man and they gave birth to the Nephilim, which are written in stories and written through other cultures, and they're about giants and large beings, which these were supposed to be. Uh, and they taught man different things. They taught them mining, gold, precious metals, astrology, astronomy, gematria, a whole bunch of different astrology, different arts, and that's what's written back there in that part of the story. Different theories that go through them, that they are the Nephilim, they are the fallen ones, or they're aliens that came down to Earth. And then you get into the whole part about this 10th planet, which has been named Nibiru, which sort of does a rotation or an orbit every so many thousands and thousands of years. And these Anunnaki came to Earth, and because their planet was in poor shape and their atmosphere, they were going to be dealt lethal doses of solar radiation from the sun that they also do share with us. And there was also talk about this 10th planet maybe showing up in some sort of screens. I know there was a talk about that about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. And it was actually a big topic and a lot of channels there about Nibiru. And when it came to this whole time with date times with 2020 and 2112 and 20, I think there was 2018. I think there was another one, and then with full moon cycles and stuff like that. But anyways, that they had come down and they were mining gold here on Earth because they needed to take that and crush it up and throw it in their atmosphere, because gold is a good reflector of solar radiation. That's why it's used in the aerospace industry for spaceships and satellites and stuff like that. And so they were going to pump this stuff, so the story goes, into their atmosphere so they could protect their planet, so they wouldn't get blasted with solar radiation. And what else did they do there? So they came down and they started mining gold, and they said, hey, well, why are we doing all the work? They had another creature that they had there, and they started making them mine gold, and then they started manipulating with genetics and created humans and had them mine gold. And that's the story of why why the gold started from one sort of aspect of it. And I looked at it. Another thing is where was gold mentioned before? So like I said, the King James Version has been heavily changed from its original version. So certain words in that, like even in the 1611 version, King James Bible, there's no J in the whole entire Bible. So how do you get a Jesus with no J in the whole Bible in the New Testament? So that's sort of interesting, I thought. But anyways, in the Bible, Garden of Eden, and in Genesis 2:12, and the gold of that land is good, bdellium and onyx stone are there. And I like, what the hell is bdellium? I said, so I found out what that was. It's a fragrant resin produced by trees related to myrrh, and it's used in perfume. So gold, frankincense, and myrrh. You've heard that sort of combination before. The three wise men that came to Bethlehem on the birth of Jesus. So there's in the King James Bible there, I looked at that. The gold is mentioned 417 times, and I think it's mentioned in the building of the ark Ark of the Covenant, which was supposed to hold the Ten Commandments. Gives you the whole dimensions of what uh, the the ark is supposed to be, and it's layered in gold and stuff like that, and with the two birds on top, or angels, whatever, on top, and then how it's supposed to be carried out. But silver like 320 times, and money about 140 times. So what did he had there? So in the Bible there, gold is a product of God, and since he created them, it was given value. So color of gold, meaning biblically, gold means glory, divinity. Sorry about that. That's just the furnace. We're back down here in the basement again, as we're still going through this, moving into the new place. So anyways, hopefully you can still hear me. So anyways, gold, glory, divinity, kingship, eternal deity, foundation, used in altars, beauty, precious, holiness, majesty, and righteousness. And then, like I said before, is that it was mentioned that the fallen angels taught early man about the elements and taught him about mining gold. And then in Kings chapters 4 to 10, gold was brought to Jerusalem from Ophir by King Solomon's workers, about 125 million of today's price, about half the known gold of the ancient world. That's in the Bible territory. But gold was also found in other places, like in the Mayans and Incans, and they were mining it too as well, and using it to adorn artifacts and other things there too. Like there was, what did I have there? In ancient times, where did they find gold? They found it like most of all the information you get for gold is dealing with where all the stuff where the biblical area happened, and but you see it all through other cultures where they've used gold as well. But where they found it on the surface level near rivers in Asia Minor, such as the Pactolus in Lydia, also mined underground from 2000 BC by the Egyptians and later by the Romans in Africa, Portugal, and Spain. It was first used for money in 700 BC when Lydian merchants produced the first coins. They were made from 63% gold and 27% silver mixed, and was called electrum. So at the original part there, with all this gold artifacts and stuff like that, it wasn't even used as money in the beginning, and it was just used to collect. Like, and it like not as what we use gold there today, and what we sort of based our monetary system in the beginning, until we went to this sort of this fiat system, and what a lot of countries have done, and the States I mentioned there before, and Canada has done that as well. And like I said there, like I looked into that part about Canada, where I'm from, and Canada doesn't even store gold anymore. So it's just all in this fiat system. And I had to figure out what's a fiat system. And fiat means let it be done. Fiat system, not backed by gold or silver, just government say so. Government print as much money as it wants, and that's where it gets into this whole problem with inflation. Okay, fiat currency is without intrinsic meaning belonging, natural, or essential value that has been established as money, often by government regulation. Fiat money does not have use value. It has value only because a government maintains its value, or because parties engaging in exchange agree on its value. So you look at what our money system is now. If Canada's under a fiat system, our dollar is on what the government and what other trade partners say our dollar is worth, and it gets into the whole part. Like I'm not a economist or a banker part, or business person anyways, that know anything about the intricacies of the dollar, but it does sort of make you wonder, is that if the government says that that piece of paper is worth something, then that's what it's worth. It's not backed by anything whereas like there's no substance behind it, but promises. So that's what you sort of have to look for, and that's, I guess, when you get into these topics about when world markets and stuff like that collapse. And I think I did a show there with Laura a bunch of years ago when they were talking about banks collapsing, and it's always sort of been a thing about what would happen if the dollar goes down. Like, what do you have? Your money's not worth more than what it's printed on. It has no value, and like they pretty much outlawed the barter system. And whereas like you could go and give a person a bag of flour and they give you a dozen eggs or whatever. There was just no money exchange, and the reason the barter system has sort of been removed out of there is because you can't tax something like that, right? It always has to have a price, right? So it's like I said before, and that's when it comes into this whole thing about going into this cashless society, right? To exchange stuff, and you're going to have to use some sort of RFID tracking chip, so all your transactions are gone. So now you've removed paper money out of the equation, so you no longer have a substance. You no longer have gold that you could use to purchase stuff. You can still purchase gold and keep it in your house and stuff like that, but gold's value, whatever they've given it to, is only worth if somebody wants it. So you figure if you went into this into this prepper nightmare where say the system's shut down, major problems there, and there is no use of the banks. You can't go use your ATM. Paper money, can't get to it because there is no electronics. Everything's sort of shut down. You got gold, and so you want to buy some gas or buy some water. I have people there is that, hey, well, what is that person going to accept your gold for? Hopefully that maybe market and everything starts up again there, but in a long time, if it was like a couple of years or something like that, in a sort of a doomsday type scenario, what is gold? If I have a whole bunch of water and you have $100 in gold and you give me gold, what is that gold going to do for me? It just, besides it's a rock, it doesn't do anything, right? Like you give me gold, I give you water, I have no more water, and I just have this rock here. What do I do with this if nobody else wants to accept this rock, that I can get something that I can use? See, there's this problem, this thought about this substance. This is why this whole thing, why gold? Like it could be anything too. It could be like we could have made it that it was platinum and stuff like that we based things on, but we based it on this metal for some reason in our history that we've sort of taken a dormant to. And I believe it was the Mayans or the Aztecs. I think when they found that on the ground, I think they called it was the sun's tears, and they worshipped the sun, thought the sun was a god, right? So you end up having the whole thing is that they covered everything in gold because they were sort of giving it sort of praise to what they believed was their god. And other sort of I guess sort of you'd say sort of new age or even past alchemy things, there was a thing called monoatomic gold. And now I've heard of this stuff before, and it's supposed to have these great properties, and that's what it sort of is. But when you look into it, you see it's actually not really even a thing. And I sort of went in, I'll give you what I sort of found out here. Monatomic gold, the conspiracy, magic, okay, allows subconsciously old beliefs and worries to surface and becomes understood. Monatomic gold acts upon the pituitary gland, inducing an increase in hormonal production and thus a rejuvenation agent. Monoatomic gold strengthens the heart, improves production of the red blood cells in the bone marrow, and increases the production of semen. It can be manufactured alchemically out of 24 karat gold. Monoatomic gold is not to be confused with colloidal gold, which maintains its color. As you research further, monochromatic gold is just a farce. Chemistry people allude to a deception perpetrated by the Illuminati and shape-shifting reptilian overlords. All elements can be monoatomic when they transition from to gas form. Now, how would you keep these atoms from creating particles, considering the van der Waals forces? And if you know what it requires enormous energy. So van der Waals forces is a weak short-range electrostatic force between uncharged molecules arising from an interaction of permanent or transient electric dipole moments. So that's a whole bunch of stuff there that gets into chemistry. So you got to think about is that we all know, if you remember in school, the three states of matter, right? Yeah, solid, liquid, gas. Okay, so if you got gold is at solid point, gold's melting point is around 1943 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about just over 1,000 degrees Celsius. And the boiling point is around 2,700 degrees Celsius, or just under 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's where, when you get a liquid going into a gas, is where you just have monoatomic gold. So you got to figure that's where it would be into its single atomic state, right, in a gas state. Because if it's a solid, it'd be all together, right? You can't to separate atoms. You got to figure out how small an atom is, right? And I think the atomic weight of gold, I think, is 197. So you got to figure that to get it down to small little atoms is like so tiny gas state, and it'd be so hot. So how would you ingest that into your body to help your pituitary gland? Because you got to figure gold itself is an inert substance, right? You can ingest it, and it doesn't, as we said before, it doesn't dissolve in water. So you got to figure the body is over 50% water and other chemicals and everything that's made up of. And it doesn't do anything. It just passes through your system. So even if I don't know how you would go and ingest monoatomic gold in a vapor state, because if it was dust or it doesn't dissolve in anything, to drink it, it would just pass through your system. Anyways, but if you look at what you had there, what gold can be used for, it is actually used in medicine, but it's used in conjunction in a chemical compound. And there, I think it was like a sodium erythromate, which is a C4H3, gold, oxygen 4, sulfur 2, and there's another one, orthothioglukose. And these are both small amounts of gold in a chemical structure. And they're used to deal with rheumatoid arthritis. That's the only two ingestible gold things that I've ever seen, or that I found in medicine, besides this talk about this monoatomic gold, which was I guess passed through history, through alchemy, that this was supposed to be this rejuvenating gold. And you got to think there's a lot of stuff that people believe back then, which could be true, which could be not true. But in looking at it, there is that pretty much you can't eat gold. It doesn't do anything for you except for mixing it into a compound to help you with your arthritis. So we'll go through here. So what else was gold used for? Well, we just all through history there, people have just collected gold. Like it was no reason for it all until later on. Like I said, there around 700 BC, it was used for mud. Gold was associated with beauty and power, and they've always gone together. Ancient times, made into shrines and idols, the golden calf, plates, cup, vases, vessels, jewelry, and adornments. The gold of Troy, excavated in Turkey from the era of 2450 to 2600 BC, shows the range of gold work from jewelry to gravy boat. This is before gold became money in 700 BC. The quest for gold by the Phoenicians, Egyptians, the Indians, Hittites, Chinese, and others. They would send prisoners of war, slaves, and criminals into the mine to mine gold just to acquire more. And there was no real sort of reason for it because just that it was there. And somebody in our past, which we no longer know why, had made it so, hey, collect gold. And we don't have anything, no solid history that says why we do that. The Incans referred to gold, as I said before, from tears from the sun. Other ancient religion factions worshipped the sun. So if it was all that can be done for it there. So you can't eat it and you can't drink it because at a liquid state, it's still even too hot to even ingest. So ancient man supposedly didn't have the technology to boil it to do all that stuff, except for whatever that was sort of written in these sort of ancient alchemy texts. But you got to figure 6 uses for gold today. 78% of it is used in jewelry, used in electronics and computers, dentistry, and a little bit I said there in medicine, aerospace. It's good for blocking radiation. We use it in medals and awards, and finance and investing. So why was it such an important thing back when they didn't have technology back in ancient times? Is it part of the story is true that through all these myths and legends that maybe there was something more? Maybe there was something more to our history back then that we haven't known. Maybe it's written somewhere that's being held into one of these secret government-controlled or Vatican-controlled vaults that contain this history that is sort of lost to us. Like, it makes no sense at all that you got to know what we use for gold there today. It's used a lot in computers and in the aerospace space technology. And if you look back in ancient myths and lore that people came down, and that's the supposed theory that aliens came and came to this earth. And if you think about it the other way too, if you look it into the biblical ways, is that angels came down, and those would be non-corporeal earth type creatures, so they would be also considered, I guess, in a way, aliens, and they told about gold. So there's many different things that it had there. If you have it there that the Anunnaki are the fallen angels, and they relayed this message about gold, they needed gold because gold had some sort of importance. It was never relayed, or there's nothing written in history of why gold became such an important thing when there is so many other things out there that are more important to life. Like I've mentioned this before, the law of threes. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. That's sort of this sort of golden rule. There's no part about their 3 something with gold in it, because that's just to maintain life. If you don't have air for 3 minutes, supposedly around there, is that you become brain dead, you're dead. 3 days without water, you dehydrate yourself, you're no longer living. 3 weeks without food, you deteriorate and you starve to death. And no part of that part was anything about gold. So a look at about that is what's its importance as an individual, besides what it is today in a monetary faction that has been sort of imposed on the individual, that gives us our dollar, no longer our dollar anyways now with this fiat currency here in North America, but where it doesn't sort of stand there as a backer for the dollar. There is sort of no purpose through history that you can see that we know of anyways as the reason for gold and why it is there. Besides that, it's it's there. Like I said there, we've lost the primary ancient purpose and the reason. You can't eat it, you can't drink it. Its worth is only relevant to those that give it importance. And you figure, what do we have there? What is this gold importance is aligned to how we relate to it. In the Olympics, gold medal, that's the top honor. And gold in music, gold album, to be the best, the gold standard. Health, golden tan, golden glow. Looks, golden hair. Retirement, you get the gold watch. Food, Golden brown is usually the best way to have something that's cooked. Sun, golden rays, jewelry, gold chains. So there's always gold that's sort of always in there. That's sort of in our uh, verbiage, our talk about gold being the best, and why we always have that gold is up there. But is what I've found there right now is I have no understanding of why we started this whole reason of why we like gold and why it became such an important thing. Besides that, it's important to us now in technology. So unless there's hidden history in the past where they use gold for something more than what our textbooks and what the propaganda we've been told in our history as we grew up being told through in school, that there could have been another use that was used for it back then, and that could probably explain how these ancient structures like the pyramids and other pyramids and other things around the earth were done, how they were transporting materials, moving huge blocks, a whole bunch of hidden history there. Anyways, but that's it for the delicious recipe this week. And thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you all next week. Bye.